Brooklyn Beckham says he's done with his family, but his parents refuse to respond the way everyone expects. No denials, no public pleas, no damage control interviews. Instead, David and Victoria are playing a silent, psychological long game to pull their son back without pushing him further away. Brooklyn Beckham has finally spoken. And when he did, it wasn't subtle, it wasn't forgiving, and it wasn't short. His words landed like a grenade, accusing his parents, David and Victoria Beckham, of control, manipulation, and trying to sabotage his marriage. He made one thing painfully clear. He does not want reconciliation. And yet, if you watch closely, David and Victoria's response hasn't been explosive at all. No emotional interviews, no dramatic statements. Instead, what we're seeing is something far more calculated, a quiet, strategic attempt to pull their son back without pushing him further away. This is the story of that silent strategy. To understand what's happening now, you have to go back to where everything truly changed. April 2022. Brooklyn marries Nicola Peltz at her family's Palm Beach estate in front of 500 guests. On the surface, it's a fairy tale wedding. Behind the scenes, it becomes the fault line that fractures the Beckham family. Brooklyn later claims this was the moment he realised his family would never truly accept his wife. He accuses Victoria of humiliating him during the reception, hijacking a moment that was meant to be shared with Nicola. He claims private tensions became public wounds, and from that point on, the relationship never recovered. But what's striking isn't just what Brooklyn said, it's what David and Victoria didn't say afterward. There was no immediate rebuttal, no denial tour, no attempt to set the record straight. Instead, the Beckhams went quiet, and that silence, it was intentional. Their first move wasn't a statement, it was nostalgia. Just days after Brooklyn's explosive post, Victoria appears in the comments of a resurfaced 2006 photoshoot story. It shows David with his back to the camera, their children's names tattooed across his skin. The photographer recounts a moment when young Brooklyn ran onto the set and hugged his father's leg, sparking a spontaneous family embrace. Victoria's response is simple, 4 words. Brings back great memories. No mention of the feud, no response to accusations, just memory. David mirrors it with his own quiet acknowledgement, good memories. This is the first layer of their strategy, reminding Brooklyn and the public of who they used to be before the fracture, not arguing facts, not addressing claims, reframing the emotional narrative. At the same time, David carefully chooses his words in public appearances. When asked about social media and children, he doesn't mention Brooklyn by name. He talks about mistakes, about learning, about letting kids grow. He avoids confrontation while subtly positioning himself as a father who understands conflict, not one fueling it. Then comes Davos. David Beckham steps into the global spotlight at the World Economic Forum. Cameras are waiting, questions are coming. Brooklyn's post is fresh, viral, unavoidable. And yet David refuses to engage. When asked directly about his son, he sidesteps, offering polite small talk instead. This isn't avoidance. This is containment, because any direct response would escalate the situation, and escalation is exactly what David and Victoria are trying to avoid. Behind the scenes, the message is consistent. They would welcome Brooklyn back in a minute. They've repeatedly asked for meetings, for conversations, for a way forward, but they aren't forcing it publicly, and that's key. Every move is designed to keep the door open. Meanwhile, Victoria shifts focus outward. She reunites with the Spice Girls. She posts supportive messages about her other children. She appears composed, surrounded by friends, not crumbling under pressure. This isn't distraction. It's positioning. She's showing Brooklyn that the family still exists, still functions, still loves him. Without begging, without blaming. Contrast that with Brooklyn's stance. He doesn't just accuse his parents of emotional control. He accuses them of business control too. He claims they tried to pressure him into signing away rights to his own name before his wedding. He frames brand Beckham as something that always came before family. This accusation hits at the heart of David and Victoria's public image, and again, they don't respond directly. Instead, clarification comes quietly. It's framed as a misunderstanding tied to childhood trademarks, not coercion. The tone remains calm, legal, not emotional. De-escalation over drama. And then there's Nicola Peltz. Brooklyn insists he is not being controlled. But every major shift in his relationship with his parents coincides with moments where Nicola becomes central, from the wedding tensions to social media distancing to legal boundaries around contact. Nicola's actions are subtle but firm. Brooklyn sends legal instructions limiting how his parents can reach him. He blocks family members. He distances himself from public Beckham events. He aligns himself fully with his wife's family structure. Private, billionaire-backed, tightly controlled. To David and Victoria, this creates an impossible balancing act. Push too hard and they risk confirming Brooklyn's narrative. Say nothing and they risk losing him completely. So they choose the middle path: memory, patience, silence. They post about family history. They speak carefully about parenting. They refuse to turn this into a media war. Even as Brooklyn declares he doesn't want reconciliation, they leave the door visibly unlocked. Because here's the reality. The Beckhams are playing the long game. They're betting that anger burns out faster than attachment, that public defiance fades, that time will soften what confrontation would only harden. And right now, everything they're doing and not doing points to one goal: making sure that when Brooklyn is ready to come home, there's still a place waiting for him. What makes this situation even more complex is that the Beckhams aren't just parents. They're a global brand built on control, precision, and image management. And yet, in this moment, they are deliberately refusing to use the very tools that made them powerful. No legal threats, no public denials, no coordinated interviews pushing back against Brooklyn's claims. That restraint is the strategy, because David and Victoria know something crucial. The moment they openly challenge Brooklyn's version of events, they risk pushing him permanently into Nicola's camp. And once that happens, the divide becomes irreversible. Instead, their moves suggest a different approach, one rooted in emotional pressure without confrontation. Take Victoria's social media behaviour. Since Brooklyn's statement, she hasn't addressed him directly, but she has amplified family memories, moments of unity and affection toward her other children. Every post sends the same unspoken message: you're still part of this, even if you're not here. It's subtle, but powerful. Yeah, David mirrors this approach. When speaking publicly, he frames everything around parenting philosophy. Children, learning, making mistakes, needing space. He never labels Brooklyn as wrong. He never casts himself as a victim. That absence of blame is intentional, because blame would lock positions. Instead, David positions himself as the steady, constant, the father who waits. Behind closed doors, it's clear they are terrified of losing their son completely. The language coming from their side is consistent. They would take him back instantly. They want conversation. They want healing, but they're refusing to chase him publicly, because chasing would confirm Brooklyn's claims of control. And this is where Nicola Peltz's role becomes critical. Brooklyn insists he is acting independently, but his actions suggest a full alignment with Nicola's boundaries. Legal letters restricting contact, rules about tagging, distance from family events, a complete severing of informal communication. This isn't impulsive, it's structured. Nicola comes from a family where boundaries are enforced through lawyers, not emotions, where disputes are managed quietly, not aired publicly. And Brooklyn, now deeply embedded in that world, is adopting the same approach. From David and Victoria's perspective, this creates a dangerous dynamic. The longer Brooklyn remains isolated within Nicola's orbit, the harder it becomes to reinsert themselves without appearing intrusive. So they pivot. Instead of focusing on Brooklyn directly, they reinforce the family unit around him. Romeo and Cruz are seen living normally, publicly supported. Harper remains protected. The family machine keeps running, not to exclude Brooklyn, but to show him that life hasn't collapsed without him. That's not coldness. It's leverage, because guilt doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to absence. At the same time, David and Victoria avoid escalating the business side of the conflict. Even as accusations about trademarks and brand Beckham circulate, they don't counterattack. They allow clarification to happen quietly, framed as administrative, not emotional. Again, de-escalation. Brooklyn's own words reveal the paradox at the heart of this feud. He says he doesn't want reconciliation. He says he's standing up for himself. And yet his message is deeply emotional, filled with unresolved hurt, humiliation, and a need to be believed. That's not the voice of someone who's fully moved on. It's the voice of someone who wants acknowledgement, but on their terms. And David and Victoria understand that if acknowledgement comes publicly, it will feel performative. And so they keep it private, or at least as private as possible under global scrutiny. Even in moments where they could have defended themselves, like the wedding dance controversy, they stay silent. They don't correct timelines. They don't offer alternate versions. They don't argue memory versus interpretation. They let the noise pass. Because they know something Brooklyn may not fully realise yet. Public battles harden private wounds. Instead, they're banking on time. Time for anger to cool, time for distance to feel lonely, time for certainty to turn into doubt. And Nicola's influence here cannot be ignored. From Brooklyn's perspective, Nicola is the one who stood by him when he felt unheard, the one who validated his feelings, the one who offered structure and protection. That loyalty is powerful and right now unbreakable. But it also places Brooklyn in a position where reconciliation doesn't just involve forgiving his parents, and it involves redefining his independence within his marriage. And that's the real tension. Because if Brooklyn reconnects with David and Victoria, even privately, it risks undermining the very stance he took publicly. It risks making his explosive statement feel less final, less absolute, and Nicola knows that. So while the Beckhams wait, Nicola holds the line. She doesn't attack publicly. She doesn't post emotional rebuttals. She doesn't fan the flames. But she maintains distance. Legal distance, emotional distance, structural distance. It's a quiet standoff. On one side, David and Victoria using patience, nostalgia, and restraint. On the other, Brooklyn and Nicola using boundaries, silence, and finality. And in the middle, a son caught between identity and origin. What makes this feud so compelling isn't the accusations or the headlines. It's the contrast in strategy, one side waiting, the other side closing doors. And here's the key question moving forward. Which approach lasts longer? Anger is loud, but it burns fast. Silence is quiet, but it endures. David and Victoria are betting that time will eventually do what confrontation never could. Bring Brooklyn back, not because he was forced to, but because he chose to. Whether that gamble pays off remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. This isn't a family screaming at each other through the media anymore. This is a long, careful chess game, and every move is being made in silence.